This is May, the month of female influencers that we've been celebrating here at DCH. And today we're going to have a special feature on mental health. You know, it says in Proverbs 31:17, when it talks about the Proverbs 31 woman, it says, she equips herself with strength, spiritual, mental, physical fitness for her God-given task and makes her arm strong. So here at DCH, we believe in order to have a greater influence on our mental health, we need to, in order to be greater female influencers, we need to take care of our mental health, make sure it's in balance. And today we've prepared a panelist discussion, live panelist discussion, so we'll be free to take some of your questions on mental health and examine where we are and see where we can go to get there. You know, there's so much turmoil going on in our world. Every day we look at the news, we see despair after despair. The normal system that we know is not normal. We wear masks. Underneath the mask, we can't see if we're smiling or frowning or sad. So what about social distancing? With social distancing, how can I extend a hand, extend a hug, extend a handshake to my fellow friend or stranger, you know? And then when we're social distancing, we can't even have that fellowship, you know? When we're down, we're hurting, or one person may be hurting or another. Who is there to encourage you? We want to help you meet some of those needs and want to help you express yourself. Today, we've invited a panelist of health experts that will be able to take some of the questions. So, therefore, I want to discuss, before we get into our panelists, please, I want you to prepare at this time. If you can prepare, go to menti.com. The code will be on the screen. And feel free to ask some of those questions so we can address. We're going to have a lot of questions. We want to make sure we get to every single one of them. But back to the world that we have today. Suicide, unfortunately, has increased within the past 2 months. One doctor in California said he's never seen this many people come in from self-inflicted wounds. He's seen more deaths of suicide than COVID. Physical abuse has increased. Spousal abuse has increased. What is going on? How is one to protect their mind in a world full of so much uncertainty? There's no hope in financial system. What's strong today may be weak tomorrow. What is going on? How do we sleep at night? I think we should go ahead and ask the panelists that. So from here, I'll go ahead and divert to my panelists, and I'll go ahead and introduce them. All right? So the first person I would like to introduce is registered nurse Abbie Ajala. She'll be talking to us based on her perspective and answering questions as well. And then we have Kemi, Ahmed. She's a licensed she's a licensed professional counselor. And then we have, lastly, our family practice doctor, Dr. Olufunke Odetunde. All right? So before we get into our questions from menti.com, Dr. Olufunke, starting with you, I mentioned a couple of statistics there that are pretty disturbing to some people. How is one supposed to have hope in a world that's constantly feeding us with no hope?
Thank you so much. Before I even start saying anything, I just want to appreciate the senior leadership of this church, giving us this opportunity and pretty much creating this forum to be able to address these very difficult issues that most of the time are really swept under the rug and nobody wants to address. So I'm really very grateful for this opportunity to do that. Having said that, from what my sister Ngozi was talking about, yes, there's been an increase in the suicide rate. There's been increased in rate of domestic violence. There's been increased risk of abuse generally, increased level of stress, and so many other things. And a lot of this has to do with so many emotions that people are experiencing now. One of them is the emotion of fear. The level of uncertainty is so high. People feel out of control. And because of all these, all these things that were existing even before the COVID virus have been heightened. But what I want us to focus on today is actually what we have control over. Yes, we don't have control over what's going on out there, but we have control over ourselves. We have control over what we feed our mind. We have control over what we feed our body. We have control over who and what we surround ourselves with. So I'm just going to quickly summarize a few tips in terms of what people have control over and what I'll encourage them to do. Number one, talking about your mind. Please feed your mind with positive things. Shut out a lot of the unnecessary news out there. You don't need to bury your head in the sand, but you don't need to spend 24 hours listening and watching all those negative stuff out there. So feed your mind with very good things. Listen to very good podcasts. Listen to very good music. Those are things we have control over. So that's feeding our mind. Read new books. Learn new language. Learn new craft. Those are things you have control over. Talking about our emotions, yes, we need to acknowledge all those different emotions, but we don't need to stay there. So we need to feed our mind. We need to feed our body. The other thing has to do with our body. We need to rest well. Self-care is the best thing you can do for yourself. So what does that look like? Make sure you're sleeping, minimum of 7 hours a day. Make sure you're exercising, even if it's 5 minutes. Make sure you're feeding your brain with good food. Good food, not high sugar. Those are things we have control over. So as we focus on our health, our physical, our mental, our emotional, and also our finances. Let's look at your expenses, see where you can strike things out. Those are things we have control over. And by the time we do all that, our stress level will be less. There will be less fighting in the house. There will be less thought of suicide. There will be renewed hope. And hopefully all those statistics will be turned around. All of us are going to come out stronger on the other end.
Thank you, Doctor. Those were a lot of great nuggets. Did you get that? Focus on what you can do first to help yourself. Focus on your self-care. Those are great. Thank you so much. I guess we'll go to our first Menti.com question.
So I have this question. It says, I live alone and have no family in town. Prior to the pandemic, I had tons of friends. Now I find myself alone. How does one deal with depression and loneliness?
How does one deal with depression and loneliness? We talked about isolation, how as you see that my sisters and I, we're 6 feet apart. We're social distancing even among ourselves here at church, but nobody is here. So I'll ask that question to my sister, registered nurse, Sister Abbie.
How do we deal with depression?
Yes, in the midst of isolating.
Before we had to socially distance and isolate, what kind of connections did you have? Social cohorts did you have? Did you belong to a church group? Did you belong to a service group? Did you belong to a volunteer group? What kind of social connections did you have? You might want to revisit them and try to engage using social media. Technology has made things very easy. We're able to watch services online, even though we miss the fellowship of interacting physically, but we can connect via technology. There's so many apps for connecting. WhatsApp is a very good one I use, text, phone calls. Connect with your social groups. This is not the time to isolate yourself emotionally, even though you're isolated in the house. You have to reach out, you have to connect to your social groups. And another thing you can do, you can feed your mind like Dr. Odetunde said. This is a time to take account of what your strengths are, your weaknesses are. Do you want to improve some of the habits you have been bogging yourself down, you want to improve? Do you want to learn a new craft? This is a time to really take stock of who you are and what you can do for yourself in addition to reaching out to people. By the time you do all this, I bet you won't feel so isolated or depressed. And if you still need help in that area, there's going to be resources that will be posted on later on that you can reach out to people and you will get help.
All right, thank you so much. So self-awareness. Thank you. We'll take the next question.
I am concerned about this pandemic as I have family members that are high risk, and so am I. Each day I have to live with the fear of catching COVID or my loved ones. It's hard not to concentrate on all the fear, but I have to wash my hands often, avoid touching my groceries, so many don'ts. Is it even realistic to avoid catching COVID-19?
Okay, I'll let Kemi answer this question. But Kemi, before we ask that question, she's, the person, he or she, they made a good point. We're washing our hands. I heard try to watch it like every hour. Even I heard something about groceries, wash your groceries, disinfect your groceries, literally disinfect when somebody comes around. How do you keep up with all of it? How in the world is one not to feel anxious in spite of so many restrictions and the fear of getting coronavirus or their loved one getting it?
First thing I would touch on is the Bible says that we should not be anxious and we should not fear. So I would stay on that. Keep that in mind that with God, we will be safe. And with the precautions that the CDC has for everyone. Continuously washing your hands is one of the preventions that they have to keep COVID away from our homes. So just being aware of the things that they have in place for us, for each and every single one of us, should be one of the main things that we do on a daily basis. I know sometimes it can be tiring, but these are just some of the things that we have to do. This is our new normal, and in order for us to stay safe, we have to do the things to precaution ourselves.
That's really good. Thank you so much. Love that. Get our minds back on God, and that will feed some of the fear away. Please, next question.
How can we remain positive where we are surrounded with hysteria and misinformation? As Christians, should we be more passionate about the truth of this COVID-19 crisis and preach the gospel of salvation like never before?
Deep question. I'll let Dr. Odetunde, would you please address that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Can you read it a little bit louder?
Yes. How can we remain positive where we are surrounded with hysteria and misinformation? As Christians, should we be more passionate about the truth of this COVID-19 crisis, and should we preach the gospel of salvation like never before?
Yes. Because, Doctor, at times I find myself focused. Sometimes I, go straight to the news in the morning when I wake up. What's new with COVID? What city is on the rise? How many people have died? We find ourselves doing that and kind of neglecting our walk with God. So what should one do in that perspective when the attention to COVID is competing with our attention with God that we're supposed to give to Him? How are we supposed to balance it all?
Okay. I'm going to start off again by, addressing the fact that what we focus on becomes our focus. Okay, so it's good to acknowledge that there's COVID out there. What I always tell folks, and there are a lot of studies that have been done that shows that what you do the first 5 minutes of your morning dictates what happens to you for the rest of the day. So what I will recommend to either my brother or my sister that asked that question is, when you wake up first thing in the morning, you want to spend the first 5 minutes of the day focusing on the positive things. So your first 5 minutes should be when you are reaching out for your Bible, when you are meditating. Those are the first things you want to do in the morning, not reaching out for your cell phone. What most of us do as soon as we get out of bed is we reach out for our cell phone. We're looking at the news from yesterday. We're looking at our WhatsApp message and all those things. And majority of those are going to be related to all those negative things that we don't need to feed our mind with. So wake up first thing in the morning, reach out for your Bible. If you don't want to read your Bible right away, spend first 1 minute meditating and in silence. And the good Lord will drop good words and good thoughts in your mind. And that's going to govern what happens for you for the rest of the day.
If I may add to that, I do know that if you don't rein in your thoughts, it will run haywire. So it will help you to listen to the good news first, because there's a lot of bad news coming at you. And it is all over in the news. So to help yourself listen to some good news. It may be some uplifting music. It may be some inspirational text or message or quote. Just have that in you so that when all the bad news and all the anxiety-filled news come at you, there's a foundation in you that can withstand that. You see, when the Spirit of the Lord has to raise a standard against all that. So you have to go to that Spirit to get that reinforcement so that that standard that you need to raise against all that anxiety-filled news can be there. Just to add to what Dr. Odetunde said.
Very powerful nuggets. So I hope hope they were able to address your question. Refocus your focus, Let's try that and see how that works. Next question, please.
Yeah, we actually have a few questions talking about how depression is viewed in the church. One specifically says, why does it feel like at times, maybe because it's safer, the church sanitizes mental health struggles, just pray, go to church, etc., especially when dealing with really difficult mental health concerns? How do I renew my mind spiritually in the midst of personal circumstances and operate despite what I feel?
Sorry, can you repeat the question louder?
Yeah. Yes, it's actually, it's a few questions. So one of the things that's being mentioned is, why is depression seen as shameful if you're a Christian? And why does the church appear to sanitize mental health issues with just praying, thinking positive thoughts, things like that, which are helpful? But also, what are some other ways that this can be done? And then a follow-up question to that is, how do you renew your mind? Like, practically, how do you renew your mind spiritually as a Christian when it's natural to feel some anxiety and fear in this time?
Okay, so that sounds like a twofold question. I'll let Sister Abbie, I'll let you answer that, and I'll also let Sister Kemi answer the other half of that question. Is about depression and renewing the mind.
How to renew your mind, correct? Let me take that part because it's something that you have to. It cannot be done for you. There's certain things that you must make up your mind to do. One of them is renewing your mind. When you get born again, your spirit is instantly renewed. But you see, your body has learnt all these habits over the years. So the only thing that we must do and it is written in the Bible, you have to renew your mind. How do you do that? You have to meditate. You have to put the Word of God right in front of you. Put yourself in situations where you're constantly fed, you see what influences our thoughts, what we see. Your senses bring all the things that influence your thought, what you touch, what you see, what you hear. So if you put yourself in a situation where you're hearing, like I said again, the good news. And when I say the good news, I'm not just referring to the Bible. People who speak negative, even though they may be Christians, that's not good news for you. You need to you have to be conscious about putting yourself in situations where you are uplifted, where you are not talked down, where you can learn, where you can feed. Let me use this analogy. I tell people all the time, when you go to a restaurant, you know what good food tastes like to you. You're not going to go back to that same food that you ate that you did not like. So wherever you get good food from, reach out to it. Reach out to the sincere milk of the word where you grow by. And that's why I'm using that analogy about food. Where you find good food that is nourishing to you and to your growth and to your mental health, please reach out to it. It's very important that you actively be engaged in reaching out to where you are fed, properly fed. And I'll stop here. Let Kemi take the next part.
All right. When it pertains to depression, I believe a lot of people lack the knowledge of what depression really is. Some people may actually be depressed and not know. So it's good to educate ourselves on what depression is, what mental illness is, and ask ourselves, am I having these signs and symptoms? Am I having times where I don't do things that I once loved doing before? Am I not being able to get out of bed? Am I having crying spells? Am I crying a lot? Am I having thoughts negative thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore. And if you are having those things, then you should reach out. There's going to be some resources that will be provided at the end of the session today. So reach out to some professionals that can be able to help and assist you to think better and help you come out of the depression.
Thank you so much. And before you answer the next question, I'll refer to the doctor. There's actually another part of that question that it talks about what's the church view on mental health, or not really mental health, depression. Why is it looked down upon? I believe that's what the person was answering. If you can help us answer that question.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question again, because that's really the issue there. And like I said earlier, I acknowledge the leadership giving us the forum to talk about this today, because that's really one of those things, is the big elephant in the room, especially in the Christian world. Nobody wants to talk about depression because we feel as if it's a sign of weakness. But I will tell you, and I'll boldly say this and say it's not a sign of weakness. Even in the Bible, there were examples of people that actually had depression. Go read the book of Psalms. You're going to see it so many times that David expressed signs and symptoms of depression almost to the point of suicide. There was time that Elijah too did when he was running away and didn't want to eat for days and things like that. So Elijah also expressed signs and symptoms of depression. Job also did, even when he had his trial. So those are three good examples in the Bible. So, and there are a lot of Christian authors out there that actually encourage and let us know that there's nothing wrong with depression. A lot of Christians have experienced depression at different times, and it's not a sign of shame. It's not a sign of lack of weakness. We're human beings, and the good Lord knows that we're all human beings. Even Christ at the cross also expressed his fear at some point and said, Lord, take this away from me. So if Christ, that's what I remind myself every day when I have patients come in, or when I have my low moments. I say, if Christ experienced something, who am I not to experience it? So we should not be ashamed to ask for help. We should not, if we're surrounded by our Christian brothers and sisters that look at us and say it's because we're saying that's why we're feeling somehow, maybe we need to move to another group of Christian friends and sisters and brothers. That's my take on that, but there were examples in the Bible, so Christians should not shy away from reaching out for help. Depression is real, and we need to address it.
Amazing, amazing nuggets from all three of you ladies. Renewing the mind, what we feed. Also, what is depression? Is depression normal, She gave clear examples of people in the Bible that went through depression. And then if it's prolonged, there are resources to show you how to get help on that. So you can get help for depression as well, because it can consume you. So, but it's a natural part of life. Is that correct? I'm not the expert here. I don't want to.
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Depression is a natural part of life. Mm-hmm. It's just that you shouldn't dwell too long on it, because then it can go down quickly, spiral fast into something. Suicide, self-harming thoughts and behaviors, which is really bad.
Thank you, ladies. Next question, please.
So I have a few questions about abuse in the home. One specifically, it says, I've been married for a little more than 3 years. I'm not a citizen, and my husband physically assaults me. Ever since the pandemic, the abuse increased as he lost his job, and I myself do hair for a living. I do not want to take my child and I to a shelter, as I'm afraid that I will catch the virus and potentially mess up my daughter's life. I'm afraid that my husband will hurt me severely if I do manage to leave. I don't know what to do anymore.
Wow, this question is loaded, and I want to say to the person, I apologize. I pity the situation that you're in, but there is help, and we have some resources that we're going to provide you with by the rear of the service. Ladies, this one actually, you're all each qualified to answer this question. And I don't want to assign anyone in particular, but if anyone feels led to answer, please feel free.
Okay, I'll take a shot at this. This question has multiple components to it. The emotions expressed are one of fear, one of the uncertainty, so the fear of catching COVID. The recommendation for that is adhering to the guidelines and ensuring that, whoever is going to be taking care of your children are also adhering to that. Use of social distancing, use of mask, hand washing, those are things that you have control over. And if you are surrounded by people that have signs and symptoms, they need to self-isolate themselves. So that's that part of it. The other part of it is the domestic abuse. The reason for domestic abuse, like we talked about earlier on, is the unusual stress. And if the spouse lost money and there's all the financial stress, that's a big stress there. So I would recommend that the two of them, if they can sit down, well, before I even say that, because domestic violence is really something that I don't want to put away here. It does happen in Christian homes. So if your life is threatened, because the person also said, I'm not sure what will happen and that type of thing, I can't quote that exactly. But if your life is threatened, you need to, that's an emergency, you seek help. You call 911, you call law enforcement, they will protect you. So that's number, because I don't want to overlook that. And if you find yourself in a shelter, the shelter will also use all the CDC guidelines. So you should not catch COVID in a shelter that is done what they need to do. So don't be fearful of going to a shelter just because you think you're going to catch COVID. And then the last thing, I pass it on to the others, is the financial stressor, because that's really what's happening there. So the two of them need to sit down together. They need to write down all the expenses. They need to prioritize the expense into the necessities. What is the necessity? A roof over your head. You need to make sure you don't lose that, and you can reach out for help to make sure you can take care of those. Food and shelter. Those are the barest essentials that you need to take care of. All the others are extra. If you need to cut out cable, you cut out cable. If you need to call out membership, you call out membership. The idea is look at your expenses and just focus on the essentials. You need to sit down as a couple and look at your budget and take care of things. Those are just some steps, and I'll pass that on to the others.
I think that has been adequately dealt with, if you ask me. There's nothing else to add on my part. I don't know about Kemi.
The only thing that I would add is there are many resources out there for domestic violence, especially during this time. They have special hotlines that you can call for domestic violence. Let them know your situation. Maybe if you don't have any family that you can go to instead of being at a shelter, but there are resources available, and I just recommend everybody take advantage of those resources.
Once again, we're so sorry about that. We pray that God will, give you wisdom about that situation and protect you. Next question, please.
Before I list the next question, there's actually a comment for Kemi. They said, "Thank you, Kemi, for too long. Church people always say pray. However, I'm not sure that is what someone who is depressed will go to first." So I think that they just expressed some appreciation for you guys addressing other means of handling depression besides prayer.
Awesome.
On that note, somebody also asked, what are the hidden signs often overlooked that are signs of depression?
Hidden signs.
Some of the signs I have come to learn are very well hidden, particularly if the person who is depressed feels like they will be judged. Some of the obvious signs would be isolating. First, they isolate themselves. Then their regular routine, they stop doing it. When the signs become very obvious, like when hygiene is affected, that is a whole nother ballgame. You see, but when it's depression, we can still come looking as cool as cucumbers, be depressed, nobody knows it. Even the person that is depressed is not acknowledging it. But they do know that something is off. So I'm going to speak to the person who is depressed. You know when you are off, when everything is not going as smooth as, or as when you're not as happy as you can be. not that you won't have moments of sadness, but when it is now taking you down a spiral and your thoughts are going down with you. So the first thing to do is don't isolate yourself. I always tell people verbal therapy. Sometimes just calling somebody up and expressing, this is how I'm feeling. It's a good way to check that. I'm going to ask Kemi to add on to that too.
Some other symptoms or signs that may go unnoticed is giving away prized possessions. Things that you once cared for, you start not caring for them anymore. You're willing to give out those things. Another thing could be adding on weight, changing your eating habits, eating things that you know that are not good for you, and you just feel like the food may be comforting you because some of the thoughts that you may be having. Some other symptoms, like Sister Abbie stated, isolating yourself and not wanting to get out of bed, crying, feeling sad, and not interacting with those that you usually interact with. Those are some of the common things. And also, if you have these thoughts of what life would be like if I wasn't here anymore, or if I didn't do this, maybe life would be better. If you start having those type of thoughts, then you should really sit down and maybe start journaling your thoughts that you're having and talk to someone. Bring those things up. And that interaction alone may be able to help you or lead you into the direction of talking to someone professionally.
Thank you so much. And Doctor, before we leave this conversation, this particular topic, we're all social isolating right now. We really haven't met with friends and all that social life like we did. How do we reach out to friends that may be going through depression? How will we know? We don't see them, and when we do see them, or our coworkers, like we're wearing the mask, they don't see. And if you can help explain that.
Can I actually throw in a follow-up question with that as well? How do we reach out, and also how do we create the space for people to come to us? How do we make ourselves somebody that somebody will feel comfortable sharing?
Very good.
Okay. So I'll address that first part. They've already talked about some of the signs and symptoms. So part of it is, yes, we're socially distancing and things like that, but you know your friends. I think it's very important that we reach out to each other. So I tell folks, think of 2 people in this church that you want to reach out to at least once a week. Let's keep it simple, okay? If you reach out to 2 people once in a week, you're doing your part. And you can reach out to them by either calling or by texting. I have a wonderful sister in this church. Every week, she reaches out to me one way or another. It's either she's going to text me or she's going to call me, even though she knows I might not be able to pick up the phone, but she will. And it's so encouraging, okay? And the Lord always lays it on her spirit to know when to call somebody. So when the Lord is laying it on your spirit to call somebody, don't hesitate. Call, text, whatever you can do, reach out to somebody. So that's one way. But if you have some folks that you know that they've always been reaching out to you, so it goes both ways. If they've always been reaching out to you and all those type of things, and all of a sudden they're no longer reaching out, that's a red flag too. So it's not only about taking, you need to give. So let it be a give and take situation there. So that's part of it. The other part that she talked about, can you remind me of that? Because I think in the process I've lost that.
Yes. If you can repeat that last question you said.
Okay.
Yes, I said, how do you create a space, the space
okay.
for that?
Thank you so much. So how do you create the space? Number one is a matter of trust. Trust is really the key. And for you to build trust with somebody, it means that you've shown them that you're trustworthy. Everything they tell you must not be heard on any of the news media. I don't want to say a particular one, okay? So they need to be comfortable that, what they tell you is going to stay with you. Don't be a blabbermouth. Don't be the one that, during your prayer conference or something, you make it a prayer point. That's not what it is. You don't need to do that. So they need to make sure that, when they tell you something, that it's going to stay with you and it's not going to go to somebody else. So that's number one. It's also you verbalizing it and letting them know that when they come to you, not just that they'll see it in your behavior, but you also need to verbalize it. You also need to let them know and say, you know what, you're going to be safe with me. What you tell me, I'm not going to tell others. And stick with that too. So that's another way of creating that. A lot of people, the church has resources, and they're very matured folks in the church. So it's important too that you reach out to them and just let them know what you're feeling. And sometimes I say test the waters, okay? Yeah. So what do I mean by test the waters? You come up with something small that if it gets out into the whole world, it's not going to be a life or death situation. So test the waters. I mean, those are just some, what I consider simple ways of creating the atmosphere of trust and somebody can reach out to you.
I also feel that people, for fear of having their situation, made public, have refrained from seeking help. My position is, I'd rather you sought help than refrain and then the result is not pleasant. Everybody's going through something. Maybe your story or your situation that you are afraid of getting public may just help the next person. You never know. So seek help anyway. Seek help anyway.
And to add on that, some people choose not to go to somebody that they know because they're afraid to be judged. So if that's the case, go to someone that you don't know because that judgment zone is not there. So if that's the case, go, once again, use the resources that are readily available.
Amazing. Love that. Great. Thank you, ladies. Next question, please.
Okay, so we actually probably only have time for one or two more questions, but I will ask this because it's been asked several times. There are a few people who are wondering how to balance God's promises with science-based advisories and precautions. Should we be more focused on just preaching the gospel? Some people are asking how real is COVID-19 in light of what the gospel says, in light of God's promises for protection, questions like that. So how would you guys answer that?
Let me quickly chip this in, because this is one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible. It says, Nehemiah prayed when they were building the wall. Remember before they built that wall, that he prayed and he posted a guard. Mm-hmm. So I tell people all the time, pray, then begin to post your guards. Mm-hmm. Don't just pray and leave your guards unposted. Pray, wash your hands, wear your mask, social distance, all those things that are facts from CDC that we have to do to ensure that we're not spreading it. Please do. Those are guards that you have to post. But let your foundation be prayer.
Very good.
Well said.
Yes. Awesome. So this will be our last question, unfortunately, but we'll go ahead and try to answer it.
Okay. So some people are asking for just more comments from the church's position on having a healthy mind and paying attention to the gospel. But I also have, and I don't want this to be overlooked because, again, this has been asked a few times, is it normal to have suicidal thoughts?
Okay. Let me quickly address that. Suicide thoughts is not normal. Okay? Suicide is a sign of extreme sense of hopelessness and helplessness. So it's not normal. So anybody that is having suicidal thoughts, whether it's pre-COVID or even now, needs to seek professional help. That's a medical emergency. So there's a lot of help out there when it comes to suicide. It's not just the thoughts, but the action. So we don't want people suffering to the point of wanting to commit suicide. So please, if you are considering suicide, call 1-800, the word suicide. 1-800-suicide. Reach out and you will get help. It's not normal to have suicidal thoughts.
Kemi, do you have anything to add to that?
I believe she said it all.
Just want to know. Okay. Now we're coming to a point of a close in a little bit. But ladies, I just want to ask you a question about self-care, because we're talking about mental health and all that and taking care of our own self, being women influencers, this is our last topic for the month. This is the last time talking about this topic, women influencers. So if you can just share with us something personal in your life that you do, a habit that you do to help with your self-care, if you can just share that with, so people, in case you're wondering, what are some things I can implement into my life that I can practice good self-care tips? If you can, I'll start with you, Doctor.
Okay, I don't mind sharing mine. I'll use the acronym SAVER, S-A-V-E-R. S is for silence. So as soon as I get out of bed, that's my time for meditation. So silence, just being quiet, and letting the Holy Spirit drop something in my mind for the day. Then the next one is, it's affirmation for me. So what I'm doing is I'm affirming the day. I'm talking of being grateful, 3 things that I'm grateful for that day. Even if it's just waking up in the morning, that I can breathe, that I can move my hands. I see people every day that can't do any of those. So I'm affirming my day and being grateful. Then my V is my vision, my visualization for the day. I'm projecting for the day what I want to see for the day. So I'm looking at it and I'm saying, God, this is where I want to go. This is what you want me to do. I'm seeing myself like we're on stage here before I came here today. I saw myself being able to be of help to somebody today. I visualized that. I said it several times so that way when I came on stage, I was able to look into the audience even though we don't have a lot of people here. But I visualized it before coming up here today. Then E, that's my exercise. Sometimes I'm able to walk for 30 minutes, Sometimes it's just 5 minutes in my room. I use a 7-minute workout app. I jump up and down, I do it. That's my E, that's my exercise. My R is reading. I wake up first thing in the morning and I pick something to read. I don't go to my phone to read anything there, okay? Because I know that's going to get me distracted. But I read something for the day. It could be my Bible. It could be a book. I'm a lifelong learner, so I'm always reading something. It could be self-development. It could be anything. So it's R. So my S is my silence, my meditation. My A is affirmation, where I'm saying things I'm grateful for the day. My V is visualizing my day in a positive way and the actions I need to take. My E is exercise, and my R is reading. That's what I do when I wake up first thing in the morning.
That's incredible. I think I want to adopt that. I love that. Okay, Kemi, if you can share with us.
Some of the things that I started doing since the COVID, since I have more time, is going bike riding with my kids. So we've been able to do that every day for the most part, and just making sure that I'm doing things with them to not make them feel so. I know that we're at home now, and so sometimes they're tired of being at home, but just doing activities with my children to make them not feel what's going on in the pandemic, and just making healthier choices with eating and focusing on that, reading more about those things and stuff like that.
Very good. Thank you for sharing.
I have a few routines, but in the space of time that we have, I'm going to keep it simple to my 3 R's. I rest. I'm a huge fan of resting. So that's huge for me. The second R, rejuvenate. When I talk about rejuvenation, it has to do with what I eat, what I feed my spirit, how happy I can be. I believe in verbal therapy, so if I need to rejuvenate, I may call up somebody that I know will talk me up, and we're on the phone, and we're doing that, or I'm texting somebody, or I'm reaching out. So all that is part of rejuvenation. Reading, listening to things that, feed my mind, and then, of course, refocus. I refocus when I go through my goals, my plans. My daughter once said to me that, oh, it's amazing how I can plan for 5 years ahead, and I'm telling her to do the same. So that made me refocus. I was like, okay, if I need to teach them how to do this, I better start doing. So I began to, refocus with them in mind. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm planning. And of course, I come back and I rest. So those 3 hours I do. I rest, I rejuvenate, and I refocus.
Wow. That was incredible. Thank you so much, RRR Saver, and yours as well. It's amazing. I learned a lot from you ladies. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. And if I can share a little bit, even though I'm not on the panel, 2 steps that I do, I have to make sure. I love to write. And it's not, when you have your self-care, it's not about what I like to do, or what Sister Kemi or Sister Abbie or Sister Funke, it's not about what we like to do. What do you like to do? How do you meet your self-care needs? Take time to study what you like to do, things that de-stress you, and implement those things. How often do you need to do? Do you need a journal once a week? Do you need a journal daily? So I want to encourage you to do that. And we've given you a lot of information. The panelists has gone above and beyond with the information. And then we also don't want to leave without giving you some resources that DCH, as well as the panel, has prepared for you. So you're going to see on the screen, there are going to be different resources for you to reach out to. DCH has pastoral counseling, it has a prayer line. If you have individual prayer requests, anything at all, just feel free to text a number. You'll see a number on the screen shortly. You also, if you have a need at all, any need, just feel free to ask. There's so many resources, and here at DCH, we want to make sure we're meeting your needs. There's also resources at the Harris Center. You have crisis intervention, as Sister Kemi talked about. We have that for you. So please feel free to take time to look at and evaluate all of the information that we're providing you with. And please take care of your mental health. We love you and we miss you, and we hope to see you again. God bless. Bye.